Okay, we're continuing Hafrashas, which was about mixing grains from 2 different years. And the last time we spoke about this, we spoke about the fact that in the summer is when the harvest comes of the new grains. So the beginning of the summer is the winter crops, and then the end of the summer is the spring crops, and how that causes tremendous difficulty for the people who use the tevel matzah system, because the new produce is coming to market, but the tevel matzahs don't show up until much later.
Did they show up yet?
They were produced already. I don't know if they've made it yet to the factories yet. I suspect not. But no, we don't use them for that reason. We have the same issue. Even we who use tevel dough have to make sure to make a new batter at the right time also. But at least it's more in our control. We have to do that also. As we spoke up last time. Okay, this time we're going to get into a little more detailed or complicated issue that relates to this. Lav Dafka does this, what we're going to talk about has to do with people who use tevel matzah. It potentially has to do with everybody. Okay, and that's like this. What would happen if we took a batch of flour and it was a mix, instead of it being all of 1 year, it was a mix partly from Tafshin Ayin Dalet flour and part from Tafshin Ayin Hay flour. Okay? For these purposes, we're going to say it was Roiv from Tafshin Ayin Dalet and partially Tafshin Ayin Hay. Okay, what would we do with that batter now that we made of this? Should we mafresh on it from Tafshin Ayin Dalet stuff, from Tafshin Ayin Hay, from both, from neither? Well, what should we do with this?
It's only from itself will be fine, right?
If we have time, I'm going to talk about whether you can mafresh from itself. Okay, it's not as simple as you would think. I'm not sure we're going to have time for that. If we have time, I'm going to talk about it. Shemitah? No. We're talking about being mafresh from 1 year on the other year. No. It's just coincidence that was Shemitah. No. Okay. So the simple case was, the simple thing we deal with this with is like what I'm talking to you about, which is during the summertime when we're switching over from 1 year's flour to the other flour. Okay, but there's some other situations would come up. For example, what happens if a bakery makes rye bread? Okay, well, rye bread is made out of wheat and rye. It's not all rye; it's wheat and rye. Okay, well, those are not they're harvested roughly at the same time, but not exactly. So it could happen even if they know their wheat is from 1 year, but their rye might be from the other year, depending on when they do it. Or the way this came up with some other hashkachas is, what happens if you want to make tevel matzah or tevel crackers out of a blend of these 2 years? What would you do then? Then you're making your tevel matzah. In this case, they were doing the tevel crackers. Remember I told you they temporarily made tevel crackers? They're making tevel crackers out of itself a blend. What's the status of that blend that they just made of tevel? That's a blend of 2 different years. Okay. Or, I mentioned to you that there's a bakery that we give hashgacha to, that this bakery takes winter wheat and mixes it with vital wheat gluten to upgrade their winter wheat into spring wheat. Okay, effectively that's what they do. Okay? At the time the first time we spoke about it was whether vital wheat gluten is chayiv Hafrashas chal. Okay? Assuming that it is chayiv Hafrashas chal. Well, for whatever odd reason, this bakery buys their vital wheat gluten from the southern hemisphere. Okay? In the southern hemisphere, winter and summer are reversed. And it turns out that they don't get their new crop until November, December time. So if they put in, every time they make a batter from July till January, they're making, let's say in our case, it'll be Tafshin Ayin Hay flour with Tafshin Ayin Dalet vital wheat gluten until they start getting the new stuff, which doesn't come in until way, way later in the season because just the way the planting season goes from where they're getting it from. Okay, so they might have months of this thing where they have their batter is a mix of 2 different years of stuff. Okay, so the question is going to be, how do you do the hafrasha for those kind of things? How do you make the hafrasha for this? Do you do both? Do you do one? Do you do neither? That's the question. Okay, so the simplest thing to say, the first thing you would say to that is that it's a question of bittul. It's bittul. If there's 3/4 from Tafshin Ayin Dalet and 1/4 from Tafshin Ayin Hay, so then you'd say is the Tafshin Ayin Hay stuff is bottle, and you'd say it has a bit of Tafshin Ayin Dalet stuff. What do you say? What do you mean, Maimon?
Vital stuff, does anything super.
Well, you could answer a simple question. It's not the Maimon, it's 25%. In the vital wheat gluten, it's just a couple of percent. Okay, we'll maybe talk about that. Okay, but it's not clear. It's not going to be. It seems from what we're going to say that we're not going to follow those kind of rules. But what would we do? So would we say, so if we would say bittul, would that mean that now, well, if we say bittul, so now all Tafshin Daled stuff, and not Tafshin because it would follow the rules of bittul. Okay? So, okay, I'm coming to that. I'm going to maybe come to that. Okay. Now, before we, let me give you another case to think about. Let's say a person made a batter of, a batter, not in a bakery where he makes hundreds of pounds. He made a batter that was exactly the sheer challah. He made exactly an amount that was a sheer challah. And that batter was 3/4 touch $9 and 1/4 touch 9. Okay, so now, if we look at it just as each part by itself would not be chayiv in challah. But the guy made a batter that's exactly the sheer challah, but it's partially from one year, partially from the different year. Now, I know you're all jumping on me because you should be. Because the thing we're talking about in Halacha Ches is that there's something that's possible with tziruf of 2 different years. The Shulchan Aruch cases where there's not bittul, they're sitting next to each other. There's dough from this year and dough from this year sitting next to each other. Okay? I'm going to ignore the possibility of tziruf for now. We'll get back to it way at the end about tziruf. But the question now is a question of bittul. Should we say that the 2 batters together are looked at as one? If they're looked at as 1 year's worth of stuff, then there's a sheer challah. If the 2 year stuff, there's no sheer challah. There's 3/4 of a sheer and 1/4 of a sheer, there's not a sheer challah. Okay? So this question is really, it's totally in a machlok Shulchan. Okay? There's a machlok Shulchan. I'm going to say it to you the way I saw it in Rav Chanan. I don't know if that's the only way to explain it. He says like this. The machlok is about a case like this. A person takes mechatas and he mixes some water into it. And the water is bottled. And now he wants to sprinkle that mechatas on a person. And there's an amount of mechatas you have to sprinkle on the person. So, and he sprinkles exactly the right amount. Okay? Well, when he sprinkles exactly the right amount, into that right amount of mechatas is some water. And the water was bottled. Okay? So the shayla is, should we say that he did a full shear, or we should say he didn't do a full shear because we know that there's water mixing? Okay? So Rashi says, according to Rashi, we look at it as ruba kikula. Ruba kikula means tells us that if rive of the thing is mechatas, it's all mechatas, and therefore the hazard just has to be the shear of the amount that you sprinkle on the person, just the right amount of shear. The fact that it's partially water doesn't bother anybody. Okay? And Tyson says no. The way these kind of things work is it's sort of like a kol the parish kind of a thing that we can assume you're getting mechatas, but we all well know that there's a certain amount of water mixed into it, and therefore you will not maz on the person the right amount, and the person, I guess, will not be tahar from that. Okay? The way there's a rash in Tful Yarn. Okay? I'm not sure how many of you chazed it recently, Tful Yarn, but Rabbi Chanan brings a rash in Tful Yarn. The rash says in Tful Yarn, he says like this. He says, tell me something. He says, tell me. Imagine if I had a half a kazayas of chaylev over here, and if he ate it, what would be the din? He wouldn't get malchus. Now he took this half a kazayas of chaylev, he threw half a kazayas of chaylev into it. He mixed another half a kazayas of potatoes. What would be the din now? So he says, according to Rashi, it's going to come out that you get malchus now because you say it's bottle. Okay. 3/4 of a kazayas and 1/4 of a kazayas, you say it'll be bottle. He says, does that make any sense? He says, how can it be that a guy started off with not a shear, he doesn't get malchus? Then he goes and he adds some more heter into it, and all of a sudden, now we say, now he has a shear. Now all of a sudden, the guy's got a shear, and he's b'chayv malchus. Okay? So that's why Tyson argues on it. And Rashi says, no, once it's bottle, then it becomes part of the thing itself, and it has a shear. So we should therefore say that according to Rashi, that it's bottle. So in my case that I gave to you, the person had 3/4 of a shear of tafshin daled flour and 1/4 of a shear of tafshin hay flour. What should be the din? The din is, according to Rashi, you would say it's bottle. Well, let's say it's bottle. According to Rashi, we would say now you have a full shear of tafshin daled and Hafrashas. And according to Tyson, you say, come on, who are we kidding? We know there's only 3/4 of a shear. There's only 3/4 of a shear. You're not chayv on Hafrashas. Okay. That's what it would seem. A variation, I haven't gotten it 100% correct, but a variation of this is what Rabbi Shefler thought about this question. Okay? I haven't gotten it fully down pat of what he said, but that's a variation of this. So, I thought you could have a raya to what we do about this shaila. What would we say when the thing is buckled into it? Is it become this thing, or does not become it? From a din in Hilchos Pesach, which is negate to Hafrashas Challah. Okay, that's why it made me think of it, because it has to do with the din of Hafrashas Challah, which is, it's coming soon, that there's a mission that says that if you put chitin into oirez, then under the right circumstances for our purposes, it could be chayiv and Hafrashas Challah. but in the din is Hilchos Pesach, a person could eat that matzah, which is mainly out of oires, mainly out of rice, okay, with just a little bit of chitim into it. Under the right circumstances, he could be going to the mitzvah of achilas matzah by eating that thing. Okay, what the details are is not important to us. Okay, but there's a mission that says it's possible to have a little bit of chitim and a lot of oires, and you could be going to the mitzvah. Okay, now
Besides the achilas breast, right?
it's not important to us what you have to do to be Yotze. It's not important what you have to do this. What is important to us is a machlokes rishonim whether that is specific to chitim and oires, or if it would work with other of the chameshes minidagim, and then secondly, would it work with other grains? Is it only rice and only wheat, or could it be anything with anything? As long as it's one of the chameshes minidagim with other things, it's a machlokes rishonim whether it works with other things when the mission is very specific, or it means all kinds of other cases also. Okay, that's also not negate us. What's negated to us is if the Mishnah brings this, the Shulchan Aruch says the case of chitim and oires. The Mishnah talks about this machlokes rishonim. He says, but I want to tell you something. If the mixture is roiv from chitim, roiv from the chameshes minidagim, roiv from the chameshes minidagim, then everyone agrees you could be able to the mitzvah with it, and you have to just a kazayis. Just a kazayis of the mixture. That means is I make a matzah out of 3/4 chitim and 1/4 potato starch. Potato starch is not oires. 3/4 chitim and 1/4 potato starch. If I eat a kazayis of that matzah, I'm going to the mitzvah. Even though I only eat 3/4 of a kazayis of chitim. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that if it's roiv of the chameshes minidagim, I'm going to be yotze just by eating a kazayis. Well, that sounds very much. That sounds like Rashi. Rashi said to us that when the thing is bottled into it, then it becomes as if it's chitim, so to speak, and now you'll be yotze mitzvah. You can eat a kazayis and you'll be yotze mitzvah. Okay, so that sounded good to me. Then, problem is that if you look in Hilchos Brachos, that's not what we're going to see. Okay, if we take the same matzah, take this exact same matzah that was 3/4 chitim and 1/4 potato starch, what's the din in Hilchos Brachos? What do you do with this thing? What do you bench after you eat this thing, or do you make a burn Hafrashas if you eat it? What's the bracha achrona that you make on this food? So of course you start by making hamoitzi or mazonos, but what do you make? What's the bracha achrona? So there are some people who say it's the same thing. You just have to eat a kazayis of it. And the Shabbat said, no, we don't go with that. Not true. You have to eat a kazayis of the chameshes minidagim. Okay? So what happened over here? He said, you have to eat chameshes minidagim. That sounds like Tosfos, which is the fact that the other stuff was bottled makes nothing. And the says the guy only ate 3/4 of a kazayis, so he ate 3/4 of a kazayis. So he didn't eat enough to bench for it. So Rishmur said, so you have to eat a full kazayis. Okay? So more surprised than I am. The question was that I don't see anybody who's talking about this question. I feel like I'm missing something over here. Okay, but what's going on over here? Make up our mind. Both of those are reasonable. One sounds like Rashi, one sounds like Tosfos, but you can't have it both ways. I mean, either it's Rashi or it's Tosfos. Make up your mind. Which one should we say? Okay, which for us is to get to our side about Hafrashas Challah, but over there, again, the exact same matzah. If you sat down at the Seder, you could eat one kazayis at B'yotze, but then you can't bench. When you come to the end of the meal, you can't bench because you didn't eat the kazayis of Chamesh Minidagim. I mean, either it was a kazayis or not kazayis. Make up your mind. You let it be whichever one it wants to be, but seeming it's this year. Okay, so I think there's a possible answer, and that answer is going to shed light back on our original question. If the Mishnah Berurah says what I just told you in Hilchos Brachos, when he says that you can't bench after eating this kind of he doesn't eat a matzah, but for our purposes, after eating this matzah, he says that. That's only true if you're eating like regular ingredients in. He doesn't say potatoes, but for our purposes he says potatoes. He says, what happens but if you just, the sugar and the spices that go into the food, those little, like those other kinds of enhancements to the food that go into there, yeah, those count towards the share. So if you have a kazayis worth of, 90% of a kazayis from chameshes minidagim, together with some sugar and spices to make up a full share, that does count. Okay, well, why should that be? Make up your mind. If you don't want it to count, if bottle is not counting towards the share, then why does the spices count to it? If bottle does count to the share, then the potato should count also. I mean, what's the difference? If you wanted to part of each other, what's the difference between this and that case? So it seems that over here, we're not following rules of bittul, like in, Yeridea kind of rules of bittul. This is not rules of bittul of Maimid and Shishim and things like this. Is not the kind of rules we're following. The rules we're looking for over here is the thing so toughful that it doesn't count, so toughful that it becomes part of what the majority is, or is it not toughful? And the word batal means, is it gone, like as if it doesn't count? So when we're looking from that kind of a perspective, if I make a matzah out of wheat and potatoes, Okay, wheat and potatoes are things that you make, so to speak, you make the base of the food out of that. So potatoes are not bottled. Potatoes are not nothing. Potatoes is that's how you made the food. The recipe was wheat and potatoes. Okay, that's how you made the food. So those things, the potatoes are never going to be bottled. The spices, spices is just an add-on. Spices is just an enhancement to the food. So, of course, the food wouldn't taste the same if I didn't put the right spices or the right flavorings into it. But basically, I would have the basic food that I was looking for would be here. And relative to the basic food, the fact that my potato chips are barbecue or plain or some other flavor, those are all details. But the end is I have the same potato chip with a bunch of different seasonings that I can throw onto it. Or over here I have a matzah, which basically the recipe is right. It's the wheat and the potato starch are the ikar. That's what makes the food. It's what it is. Whether we put on some enhancements afterwards is not important. Or actually not important. That's toughly enough that it could be bottled. So what we mean is like this. What's going on here is like this. The whole question, Rashi and Tosfos, about whether after something was bottled, could we say that it could count towards a shear, assumes that it was bottled first. Okay, the first step you have to do is you have to make it bottled. After it's bottled, now we can say, now that it was bottled, could it count towards a shear? But if it wasn't bottled at all, then there's nothing to talk about that doesn't count to the shear. So that is to say, the reason why in Hilchos Brachos, why potato starch is different than seasonings is because the potato starch can't be bottled. Or if it can't be bottled, it of course can't count to the shear. Counting to the shear is the second step. The first step is it has to be bottled. So it didn't even get to the first step. So obviously it's not going to count towards the shear. As opposed to the spices, the sugar and the spices, those things are bottled. Okay, well if they're bottled, now do they count towards the shear? So Mishmur tells you, yeah, it does count to the shear. Just like in Hilchos Pesach. Now, when it comes to Hilchos Pesach, in the same matzah, the reason why the potato starch is bottled in Hilchos Pesach and not in Hilchos Brachos is because when I'm standing on Pesach, when I'm sitting at the Seder and I have to be yotze the mitzvah with this thing, the only thing that counts is the wheat. Potato starch is nothing. In other words, the goal here is not to make myself a sandwich. The goal here is to make myself something to be yotze the mitzvah with. Well, when you're trying to make something for the mitzvah, potato starch is like spices. Potato starch is nothing. When you're making matzah for a mitzvah here, put in Hafrashas minadagim. So when I'm making a brachas, I'm trying to make a food. Is this food or that food? Potatoes are not bottled. Potatoes can't be tofu because that's how you make the food. When you come to making food for Hilchos Pesach, when I'm trying to make a food to be yotze mitzvah with, well, then the Hafrashas minadagim is what it is, and everything else is nothing. The potatoes all of a sudden become worth nothing in that case. So there, it is bottled. But once you got a piece being bottled, so then, like we said, like Rashi said, once it's bottled, then it counts towards a shear. Okay, so then over there, the Mishnah was like very happy to say that it counts towards a shear. Okay? Now, there are other ways you could say this. You may not.
It's a very interesting little word there.
This is my thought of what I think of this. I have other variations. I won't bother you with that.
Please say very Shechter.
No. We passed over Shechter already. We passed it. I'm a little stuck because I didn't get an exact report of what he said. I didn't hear from him straight. So I'm sort of piecing together pieces, but this part of it is not from him. We're trying to understand this. I'm saying to you is, we can say other ways that maybe you'd like better. I don't know if you would or wouldn't. But my point here is like this.
Things like that you probably should have to mention.
Okay, once I read he was yotze to the mitzvah.
Yeah, maybe
okay, maybe. Okay, my point here is that the whole question of bittul assumes first. The whole question of the account to the shear account has to say first, was it bottled? If it was bottled, now can it count towards the shear? And I'm trying to be mechanic to you that by Pesach it'll be bottled, while by Hilchos Brachos it won't be bottled. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Now, if I was right about that, if that's the difference between them, it depends on whether it's bottled. I think that's correct. It does have to be bottled, but being bottled depends on does it in the context of this food, is it important or is it not important? Then, when I come to Hafrashas Challah, I have a batter that's 3/4 Tafshin Ayin Daled and 1/4 Tafshin Ayin Hey. Then it's not going to be bottled. It's going to be just like potato starch in Hilchos Brachos. To make the recipe, you needed potato starch and Hilchos Brachos. Well, in this recipe, it's all wheat. So the wheat that's from the Tafshin Ayin Hey is just as much significant wheat as the wheat from Tafshin Ayin Daled. And when I make a recipe, the wheat is all the same stuff. Of course, it's going to be not bottled. We're thinking from the perspective of how does it fit in over here. Of course, it's not going to be bottled. Okay, so on the simplest level, if it makes you feel easiest to hear it, over here in Hilchos Taruvos it wouldn't be bottled either. We would say it's min b'mina, it's min b'mina, lach b'lach, and it wouldn't be bottled. We need bit b'shisha. Okay, if that makes it easier for you to hear, that's not really perfectly accurate over here. It's not really perfectly accurate for the reason, just to tell you that when they mill flour, when they blend different grains together, they don't blend it as flour. They blend it as wheat. Okay? When they blend it as wheat, it's min b'mina yavish b'yavish, and it's both the barayim. Okay? So that answer won't help you fully. It'll help you for some of the cases. Help in the bakery that blends flour together with vinyl wheat gluten, because they're blending block. But as far as the what's going on in the mills when they blend different years together, it's not going to help in that case. But I don't think you need that. I think the truth is that it doesn't depend on the rules of Hilchos Harus. It depends on, in this mixture, is it important or is it not important? And from that perspective, we would say it's not important. Okay, if it'll help you feel more comfortable with what I'm saying, it seems to me right from the Gemara in Kedushin. The Gemara in Kedushin says, you're not allowed to be mafresh challah until you make it into dough. You can't be mafresh challah when it's flour. So the Gemara says, if a person is mafresh challah when it's flour, they said to him, he wasn't mafresh challah, obviously. He wasn't mafresh challah because he was mafresh too early, and it's gezel b'yad kohen. Okay? A very strict din for the kohen, that the kohen doesn't get to keep it, he has to give it back to the person. And he says, why? I mean, why do they make this? If they want to class the person and say, I'm not class the person, if they want to tell the truth, that he wasn't mafresh challah, what's with the kohen? The guy gave it to the kohen. So we should say, the kohen should keep it, and the person should have, you say, you want mafresh challah. So the Gemara says like this. This is the problem. The kohen will think that what he got is challah. So what he got is challah, it's not chayiv in challah. So what will happen if he makes a batter of, guess what? Tevel and this. In an amount that makes it exactly the amount to be chayiv, the shir challah. He makes a batter that's exactly the shir challah made out of 90% tevel and 10% the challah that he just got from his neighbor. So in his mind, this mixture is not chayiv in Hafrashas challah. That's because he's going to think, because it's tevel and challah, it's not a shir challah. But really it is chayiv and challah, because really this stuff is tevel. So he's going to think that his batter is not chayiv and challah, and in truth it is chayiv and challah. And therefore, to make sure the kohen doesn't make that mistake, they said it's gezel b'yad kohen, kohen has to give it back to the person, so no one will think that this stuff is really challah. Okay? Now, you tell me. Listen to the mixture the kohen made. Kohen made a mixture that's 90% tevel.
What's his 90%?
Why do they 90%? Because I don't remember if it says it, or the implication is that the challah is a small amount. Okay? So I don't remember. So listen to what the guy did. He took a batter that, in my mind, 90% tevel, 10% challah, and what did he do? He mixed them together, and exactly the share challah, and what's the din? The din is, it's not chayiv in Hafrashas challah. That's our case. It's on us. That batter is not chayiv in Hafrashas challah. Why? Why is it Hafrashas challah? Why? It can't be worse than potato starch. The challah that he mixed in, imagine if he mixed in potato starch into it. Why wouldn't we say it's 90% wheat and 10% potato starch? If it's the challah can't be worse than potato starch. So why wouldn't we say that? And the answer is, either because you're passing like Tosus, either because the Gemara is saying like Tosus, that when something mixed in it doesn't count towards the share. That could be. Or it's because, over here in the recipe, it can't be bottled. It can't get to the shiloh of Rashi and Tosus because in the recipe, flour and flour are all part of the recipe. It can't be bottled. Bottled means is it's unimportant and it's insignificant and therefore as if it doesn't exist. That's not true. It's a whole batter of flour. The flour of course counts. You can't say that flour is tough. Okay, so that is seems to me is a marked case of challah where we're saying the Gemara says that the non-tevel is not bottled into the tevel. I should say not bottled. The non-tevel mixed into the tevel does not become chayiv and challah. And I'm explaining to you, according to what I'm saying to you, that fits in well. If you have a different answer, you could tell me, that's fine. But that's how I see how it fits in with what I'm saying, that even though there's a machlokes, once it's bottled, can it be chayiv? Does it take on the status of what it had? But the problem here is it doesn't even get to be bottled. It's too significant to become bottled. When you're making a recipe that's flour, then every cup of flour is part of the recipe. It's not bottled, it's part of the recipe. Okay. If you have patience, I'll tell you a possible wrench in this whole thing, this whole point that I'm trying to make. And that is the Beis Yosef in Siman Shin Lamed, towards the end of Hafrashas challah. He brings something from the Sefer called, he says, Motzasi Kosov. Okay? I saw that some people say the following thing. Okay? He doesn't say who it is. Okay? And Motzasi Kosov says the following unusual case. A guy had a batter of dough. Okay, of course, a guy's dough is not chayiv Hafrashas challah. When a guy needed the dough, it's not chayiv Hafrashas challah. He took a batter of guy's dough and he mixed into it a small amount of dough from a yid. A small amount meaning that the Yid's dough was bottled b'roiv from the Goy's dough. So he took these doughs and he mixed them together, and now he has this bigger batter that has mainly dough from a Goy and a little bit of dough from a Yid. Okay? What's the din of this dough? So, Matzosik also says like this. He says, Midoraisa, the Yid's dough is bottled b'roiv into the Goy's dough. Midoraisa, this batter is not chayav on Hafrashas Challah. Midrabanan, it is chayav on Hafrashas Challah. He doesn't explain why. We'll say that it's because it's min b'minoi and therefore needs bitter. It's not yavish b'yavish and therefore needs bitter b'shisha. Let's say the reason. He doesn't say what the reason is. But the reason may depend on a certain shach. Okay? For our purposes, we'll say it's not bubble because it's min b'minoi and needs shisha, or whatever reason you want to say. It's not. He says it's not bubble. Midrabanan, so midrabanan it's chayav on Hafrashas Challah. Midraisa it's not chayav on Hafrashas Challah. So he says, now what are you going to do? He says, you have two choices. Either you be mafresh challah from a different batter, go to someplace else, find a batter of tevel, and be mafresh on this. No, you can't do that. You know why? Because that batter is chayiv in challah midraisa. This batter is only chayiv in challah midrabanan. So it's min achiv al p'tur. You be mafresh challah from something that's chayiv for real, on something like this, which is only chayiv midrabanan. I just told you, midraisa, it's bottle. It's only chayiv midrabanan. Can't be mafresh min achiv al p'tur. So he says, wait a second, but all challah nowadays is drabanan. So what's the big deal? That's min chayiv drabanan. This is chayiv drabanan. Big deal. They're both chayiv drabanan. So he says, no, don't you know? Tosha says that trade drabanan can't be mighty one drabanan. So over here, the regular batter that I have out there is only chayiv is chayiv in challah because of one drabanan. This mixture over here needs to come into two drabanans to become chayiv. One drabanan can't be mighty two drabanans. Therefore, you cannot be mafresh from a tevel dough onto this dough. Can't be mafresh. He says, okay, so I'll be mafresh from Ne'abay. I'll just pull out a piece from the thing here and I'll be mafresh from Ne'abay. He said, no, can't be mafresh from Ne'abay either. Because if you're mafresh from Ne'abay, he says the din is, we don't say yesh bila. We're not sure that it's thoroughly mixed together. If it's not thoroughly mixed together, maybe the piece that you pulled off is completely the Goy's batter. So you're doing it for al chiyuv. You're being mafresh on the Goy's batter, on the Yid batter. Maybe you got none of the Jewish batter. You got only the non-Jewish batter in there. So you can't be mafresh. You be mafresh from Torah al chiyuv. So he says, what you have to do is, you have to take off so much dough that would be larger than the size of the Goy's dough, and then you'll for sure have gotten at least one little bit of the Yid's dough in it, and that will be the Hafrashas Challah. You can't be mafresh from a different level, and even on the batter itself, you can't just pull off a piece. You have to pull a piece that's so huge, it's as big as the non-Jew's whole batter, and now a little, plus a little bit more, so you for sure got at least a piece of the Yid batter, and now you can mafresh Challah. Okay? So, if that was true, okay, then it would mean is, that would be, again, in the case where we have these blends of flowers, we would say, wait a second, if you have blends of flowers, you can't be mafresh from something else on it, because midoraisa it's only 1 year. Let's say in our case, 3/4 touch $9, 1/4 touch 9 hay. We say midoraisa it's all touch $9 flour. You can't be mafresh on it from touch 9. You can't be mafresh on the challah from that. What about being mafresh b'nei bay? No, maybe there's no bila, and maybe it didn't get mixed together thoroughly. So according to this sheet that the Beis Yosef brings, we'd really be up the creek. I mean, we'd really be stuck in the summers. We couldn't even be mafresh b'nei bay. Forget about being mafresh with fancy tevel matzah systems. We couldn't even be mafresh b'nei bay. I mean,
why couldn't you be mafresh with something else that has what's the shear? The shear's a kazayas, right?
The shear of what? To be mafresh?
Yeah.
A mashahu. For our purposes, a mashahu.
Why can't you mafresh something that's both $9 and 9 hay?
The problem is, so Matoshi Costa says, you don't know that they're mixed together. So when you scoop out a piece, like mafresh from a different batter, mafresh from a tevel that's a mixture, that itself is a mixture. Right. So yes, you could make other batters that have a similar mixture. Remember, you have to get the roivs correctly. I mean, if it's roiv touch $9 and meat touch 9 hay, you make another one.
I guess you could say the same thing. Maybe that other mixture you're getting from the wrong thing.
Okay, I didn't think of that. Yes, I guess you have that problem. Yeah. Maybe you're not getting a thorough mixture of that one also. Okay, yeah, so according, this is a huge schummer, this sheet that he's bringing. Okay, now, in brief, I'm going to tell you why it seems like the sheet is not correct. I don't mean it's not correct, but we don't pass like that sheet. Okay, because there are two parts to what he's saying. One is that, two drabanas can't be mighty one drabana. That is to say, we treat two drabanas and one drabana as not the same thing. Okay, even though there's a logic to say, drabana is drabana, what's how many drabanas it is. Okay, so first is, there's a few things. When the Mishnah talks about this, he says, talks about this din of two drabanas and one drabanas, which is for Kriyas Megillah. Okay, so he says it's 2 days. L'chatchila you should be machmir, but the you can be megal. Okay, if you're really stuck, you can be megal. The truth is, he brings it in the Sharatzion. He brings that you should know. I'm telling you that to be masber what I think is a steer in Shulchan Aruch. Others don't agree with me. Prima Gadol says it's no steer at all, and everyone really did this. We're not choshes for this thing at all. And two drabanas and one drabanas are all equal. Okay, that's what Prima Gadol understands those dinim. Doesn't even agree with what the Mishnah Berurah said altogether. And the truth is, the Magen Avraham says, and it's really the Tosfos that it comes from. This din trade drabanan says this whole thing that we're distinguish between two drabanas and one drabana is only when they're, so to speak, pure. When the person's in a situation where they could have been at the Raisa, or they were at the Raisa once, then it's not to apply. Tosfos talks about it for a Summa, okay, that the Summa used to be able to see, and therefore he's considered to have once have been the Raisa, it's good enough. So in our case, this stuff was also once, potentially, may have been Chayiv, the Chal when it was separated. Or it had been mixed into a different batter, it could have been. So it could be, even the trade drabanan rules won't even apply to this case. Now, the second part of it. The second part, which is, should we say Ein Bila? So, if you look in Simon Shin Lamed, the Gra brings this Beit Yosef Motzasi Kosev to say that the din is, except in very, very specific cases, we say Ein Bila. Things that get mixed together are not assumed to be thoroughly mixed. And we're choshesh that maybe one side is all this and the other side is all that. That's what the Gra says. But the Gra brings this Motzasi Kosev. But the Gra says it to argue on the Shulchan Aruch. Yet the Shulchan Aruch said, no, it's not true. The Shulchan Aruch says, in the case that he's talking about, he says, no, we say, basically, he says, Yesh Bila. We assume that things get mixed together are thoroughly mixed together. Okay, so the Gra brings it, says, but wait a second, look in the Beis Yosef, he brings this Shita. Okay, well, that's true. So that Shita disagrees. But the Shulchan Aruch and everybody else around there is all assuming, like we assume, that we do say Yesh Bila. Okay, we would say Yesh Bila, and not the way others hold that it's very limited cases we say Yesh Bila. Furthermore, is that our case and the Motzasi Kosev are not the same case. Okay? If you're paying attention to the details, the Motzasi Kosev was talking about when you mix batters together. Okay? We're talking about when you mix flours together. Okay? Flours together is lach balach. We're there. Okay, I don't have all the days perfectly lined up, but it's many more people would say Yesh Bila when you mix flours together than when you mix batters together. And Motzasi Kosev was saying there's no Bila because he was talking about you took a guy's batter and a yid's batter. It had to be a batter because it's a guy's batter that's not Chayiv and Challah. Okay, so you took batters mixed together, and so there the possibility to say Ein Bila is much more meaningful than to say by us Ein Bila, when by us it's flours. It's much easier to say Bila by us. Okay? Okay. And to make you really feel good that we don't fascinate the Motzasi Kosev is that Dr. Moshe in our Simon says, you'll see later in Simon Shin Lamed that he brings this sheet Motzasi Kosev, but we don't fascinate that. Okay? Dr. Moshe says that. Okay? Now, the Dr. Moshe brings a raya from our Simon. I don't understand the raya, so I'm missing something. What he said, based on this and this thing, you could see a raya not like that. I don't get that raya, but I'm happy enough to say that Dr. Moshe was happy. I'm happy also. So he says, we don't fascinate the shita. Okay, so where we leave off then is that we're going to ignore the shita and say that it is possible to make the Hafrashas Minei Ubei. We assume Yesh Bila and you can make the Hafrashas Minei Ubei. And at the same time, if there's bittul on the right side, if it's batel, it would be batel, we'd be happy with it. But Lamaisa, we're saying is that it is not batel. It's looked at as two different things. It's if I have a mixture that's a little bit touch 9 dal and a little bit touch 9 hay, then it's not that it's batel and it has the status of one of those. It's actually both. And the thing that I have in front of me is a mixture of touch 9 dal and touch 9 hay, and I have to make hafrasha for both. Now, I can make them hafrasha minei ubei, that's fine. If you're standing right there, we assume that there was bila, and I can make the hafrasha minei ubei. If I'm not doing the hafrasha minei ubei, then, and I want to be hafrash using tevel, then I have to do two hafrashas. One for touch 9 dal and one for touch 9 hay. They're not looked at as, they don't take on one status. They're all touch 9 dal, they're all touch 9 hay. It's both of their statuses. And if they're both statuses, I have to make two hafrashas, one for the left side and one for the right side. I mean, wherever they are, I have to make those two hafrashas.